I also want to thank Governor Bryant for your leadership here in the state. Really doing a great job carrying on so much important strategic work. And I understand, Governor, you were just named chair of the Southern States Energy Board. So you'll have a significant period of leadership in which to carry on, I think, the mission of the state. Because interestingly, Mississippi, the state, is becoming one of the most important strategic energy hubs in the United States of America. And so we have an important role in the United States, but here in Mississippi, I think you have a unique position to carry a leadership role in leading the United States of America in maintaining a position of preeminence in the area of energy development. Now, I love politics and I love all the stuff. I hope you folks saw the debates last night. Now, forget about how you scored the fight. It was always very interesting to hear the leaders of our great nation talk about the issues of the day. I get passionate about our issue, being parochial. I want the United States of America to have the very best national energy policy that we can have. And it is clear that for decades we have not had a national energy policy. We got touched on that a little bit last night. But what I want to do with you this morning is give you Southern Company's vision and how important Mississippi is to fulfilling that vision for the United States of America. And I want to say, too, that this is not a Democrat issue. It's not a Republican issue. This is an American issue. This serves the interests of every family that lives in this great nation. It's important to jobs. It's important to personal income growth. It's important to national security. Because if we can develop a position of North American energy independence, this nation will be better off. What you're doing here in this state is central to that thesis. So that's what I want to talk about this morning a little bit. I'll talk about it in 3 steps. The first will be the idea that we need to develop all of this nation's great energy resources as a portfolio. You'll hear me talk about all the arrows in the quiver. That's the expression I've been using now for a few years. Recently, President Obama started using in his State of the Union address, all the above. Well, we've been saying all the arrows in the quiver for some time. The second thing we will talk about is the importance of energy innovation and how important things like Kemper County, Mississippi, and using America's most plentiful resource, coal, in a clean, safe, reliable, and affordable way for the benefit of the families we serve. The third part I will talk about is the importance of America to restore its national financial integrity. Now, why does that matter to energy? Because we are so capital intensive. The plant we're building here in Mississippi will cost about $2.88 billion. When I talk about the full portfolio that Southern Company is leading, and the only one building out the full portfolio in America is Southern Company and its host companies. We have committed over $20 billion to making that portfolio come to fruition, representing over 250,000 well-paying jobs. Because at the end of the day, it is so important for us to get this right. It matters to our families' standard of living. It matters to the ability to grow the economy, to create jobs, and increase personal income. Because no matter what you think, we can cut costs, we can raise taxes. As an American economy, we must grow. Getting American national energy policy right, specifically electricity, represents about 60% of GDP, touches it one way or another. We can be effective, and we can lead this nation out of the malaise that we're currently in. So let me go through those 3 steps and just be very specific about them. And I'll highlight, I think, how Mississippi plays a leadership role. So the first one is this idea of the full portfolio, all the arrows in the quiver, all the above, however you want to refer to it. And when I say that, I talk about 5 things: nuclear, 21st century coal, natural gas, renewables, and energy efficiency. Briefly, each one. The United States really hasn't added new nuclear in a generation of Americans. Southern Company is leading the way in the renaissance of nuclear in America. We're building 2 units, a nuclear plant in Georgia. We own a little under half of it. Represents about $14 billion of investment, takes 10 years to build. And people say, how can you take that big an investment in light of Fukushima and other issues? Let me first say that as that event unwound, our thoughts and our prayers went out to those folks, and moreover, our offers to help. And let me assure you that the United States nuclear industry is one of the safest, most reliable, cleanest, most affordable energy industries in the world. And the lessons of Fukushima, I think, apply mostly to the current fleet of nuclear assets we have in America. And I can assure you, as an industry, we get up in the morning and we go to bed at night, and we think about ways to continue to secure, in the safest manner possible, that important part of our energy portfolio. When I think about the new nuclear that we're building, we are different in 3 important respects. Number 1, we are not in a seismic sensitive area. The Southeast is blessed with good geography. Number 2, we are not on any coastline. The Vogtle units we are building are some 130 miles inland, 220 feet above sea level. It's almost inconceivable to think about how flooding or anything like the tsunami or the earthquake may occur in the Southeast. And then the third is the technology that we are putting in place today for the benefit of the citizens of the Southeast United States is the safest technology on the planet today. All of the problems that occurred around Fukushima centered on the idea you couldn't get water where it needed to be during a time of an emergency. The technology we're putting in place today is called the Westinghouse AP1000. AP stands for Advanced Passive. And all you need to get the water where it needs to be in that technology is the power of gravity. Now, we're making good progress. We're on time. We're on schedule. We're on budget. And we're committed to making that a success. Nuclear must be a dominant solution in America. We are committed to lead the way for the United States in making that happen. The second part of the portfolio is 21st century coal. Now, it is pretty clear that through a variety of, in my opinion, overreaching regulations, coal is out of favor as part of our national policy. The unfortunate truth is national policy should be the job of Congress, which is accountable to the electorate. Because of overreaching regulatory action, regulators, accountable to no electorate, are in fact setting policy in the United States. And that's wrong. The United States owns 28% of the world's coal supply. We are the Saudi Arabia of coal. Very high quality stuff. We've got to find a way to continue to preserve that important national energy resource to be used for the benefit of our citizens. Let me assure you, if we regulate coal out of the national energy portfolio, the coal will be consumed. But it will be consumed for the benefit of the citizens of China and India and other countries. And that's not right. When you export the coal, let's just consider you're exporting jobs and growth in our national income statement. That doesn't serve the American interest. What we're doing here at Kemper County, and I'll touch it here a little bit more, I think may be a way forward for coal in America. It is that important. Third area I talked about is natural gas. Now listen, let me say right at the outset, I am a fan of natural gas. I think it's really important in the United States. Look, Southern Company 5 years ago produced 70% of our energy from coal and only about 11 from natural gas. This year, 2012, we have made a transition where that 70% of energy from coal will drop to about 35%. And the 11% from gas will move up to 47%. And that's a great big deal. Southern Company is one of the largest companies in America in our industry. And in fact, when you think about energy production, we make electricity just a little bit smaller than the nation of Australia. That's how big we are. For us to make that move in that short a time is remarkable. Everyone else is rushing to natural gas, and I understand that. There's been terrific kind of innovations in delivering, exploring, and getting out of the so-called tight gas, shale gas formations, a plentiful resource. But let me say this to you. It is not a panacea. It is not the answer to all of our energy issues. As you all are probably stockholders in the market, my own son is 23 years old, and he knows everything. Even he would say, as I pick out a portfolio of stocks, I'm not going to buy just Apple. I'm going to diversify my investments. It's the way you should think about national energy policy. And while I love natural gas, and while the United States is moving to natural gas, there are 5 quick reasons, and I'm just going to skim over them here, why you must be at least a bit skeptical in our rush to that resource. And remember, we're doing it too. 5 reasons, real quick. We've got to resolve the environmental question around fracking. Number 2, we've got to think about building out the infrastructure, pipelines and storage, that support the new natural gas finds that are being developed all over the United States. Number 3, we have an historic decision to make as a nation about exporting. We know that natural gas in Japan is about $16 to $18 per million BTU. I just returned yesterday from Europe. Natural gas over there is 10 to 12 bucks per million BTU. Here in the United States, it's about 3. How much will natural gas prices harmonize across the United States and the world? Number 4, there is a tremendous shift in the consumption of natural gas because we may export, because we may use natural gas more and more as a transportation fuel, a la the Pickens plant or whatever it may be, because there is a tremendous amount of industrial shifting. My own industry, industrial America, anybody that can use natural gas should because it's plentiful and cheap, good stuff. We may move from a demand standpoint from about today 67 BCF per day, billion cubic feet, to sometime in the future potentially over 100, over 50% increase. Great for the natural gas industry. What happens to price and volatility? Number 5, there are a tremendous number of great, credible natural gas producers. But about half the industry has credit ratings, financial strength, that is not as strong as, for example, Southern Company is, which has one of the highest levels of bond ratings, levels of financial integrity. For us to hedge long-term volume and price, we will in essence be leasing our balance sheet to people that don't have strong financial health. Counterparty credit risk would be the buzzword, must be addressed. Those are the 5 points. But believe me, I think natural gas is important. It's going to grow in importance, and I am in favor of it. It is not, however, a panacea. The 4th area in this national portfolio are renewables. Let me state here, I love renewables, and prices are coming down, and it's exciting. But there are 3 reasons why it will always remain a niche, at least in the near term in America. A niche. It is not a comprehensive solution, no matter what you hear in the national discourse. 3 reasons real quick. Particularly, I'm just going to refer to solar and wind, okay? I love solar, I love wind. I love solar particularly more than wind. But where there are plentiful photovoltaic, solar, and wind resources, there are no people. And therefore, we must build great big transmission lines to move the energy from where it is to where it needs to be. Relying on transmission as a physical matter in the electricity industry is risky. If we learned anything from the Midwest and the Northeast blackouts, and recently in the Southwest, it is that the further the distance, the greater the risk as a physical matter. Number two, it is an intermittent resource. What do you do when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow? Well, what you do is you build backup generation that largely is gas. So you're doubling down your bet on natural gas. And then number three, this is an industry that exists almost exclusively because of federal largesse. Tax credits and a variety of other things. And we know how challenged we are as a national economy, as a matter of our national financial integrity. How long can we as a nation afford to pick winners and losers in that manner? Renewables are important. Southern Company's investing in solar. I like it. We're buying some wind energy. I like it. It is not a comprehensive solution. It will never displace, in my view, at least in the near term, nuclear, coal, and natural gas. Finally, energy efficiency is the fifth part of that portfolio. It's important. The cleanest kilowatt hour, the cheapest kilowatt hour is the one you never consume. And sometimes in my industry, people treat that as, oh man, don't do that because that means we sell less of our product. Baloney. In my view, if we can make our product, electricity, more efficient, more cost competitive, then we can displace other forms of energy, and we can play offense in that environment and in fact sell more. A great example would be electric vehicles or the hybrid industry or a whole variety of other things. We got to learn to play offense in an energy efficiency environment. So that's the portfolio. Nuclear, 21st century coal, natural gas, renewables, and energy efficiency. The second part of national energy policy I want to raise with you is this idea of energy innovation. Think about how the United States has led the world economy in things like IT. You know, at one time in my career, I was the CIO. You guys know what CIO stands for, right? Many days I thought that stood for career is over. Very hard job. But look at what a great job the United States has done with Microsoft and Google and Facebook and everything else there. I mean, think about how we've innovated and grown an economy. Why should we as a nation take a backseat to anybody on energy innovation? You know, it's interesting. In my industry, Southern Company is the only company that invests in a robust way in proprietary research and development. Now, everybody else uses something called EPRI, Electric Power Research Institute. I used to be vice chair of that. It's a great organization. It essentially is a research co-op. But it's not punchy enough. It's not proprietary. And what we've been able to do by being invested in research and development as a single company since really the late 60s is work on solutions that will serve our customers' interests well into the future. And in fact, the technology that we're using in Kemper County, Mississippi is an outgrowth of something that started in the 70s when we had the oil crisis. And we were looking at ways to take coal and turn it into a liquid fuel. Well, now we're using gasification. And in fact, we can take this native Mississippi resource that otherwise goes unused. We can run it through our technology we developed along with Kellogg Brown Root. We can gasify it. As we take the synthesis gas off the technology, we can put filters on there. We will capture 65% of the CO2. We'll take the CO2, it's not a waste. It has tremendous value. And we'll use it in enhanced oil recovery, push it underground, and push out more oil. We'll take the remaining synthesis gas, run electric turbines, and we'll produce more electricity. Imagine that. A technology which produces more domestic oil, less reliance on foreign oil, more domestic electricity, uses a native resource that otherwise goes unused. It has an environmental profile that's equivalent to better than natural gas, smaller carbon footprint than natural gas, has an economic footprint equivalent roughly to a nuclear plant. Big capital cost, I get that, but the energy coming out of this technology will be super cheap. And when you think about the value of the CO2, it pays largely for a lot of the fuel that we will use. That's why the energy is so inexpensive. This is a home run, not only for the state of Mississippi, but for America, for the world. Do you know this technology Southern Company is currently leasing in China? We have beaten the Chinese to the punch on innovating around coal. And that is important from an American security interest, that we take a leadership role here. And through the foresight of your political leadership here, we're creating jobs. I will repeat them just because they're worth repeating. 12,000 jobs, direct and indirect, during construction, 1,000 jobs while it's under operation. $70 million of state and local taxes while it's under construction, $30 million a year for the life of the plant. Think about that. 270 companies benefiting from that plant in Mississippi. This is not just about national energy policy. This is about our economy and jobs and the welfare of the citizens that we serve. Families in Mississippi are better off because of the Kemper County plant, and I thank you for your support. Now, let me also say this around energy innovation. There's so much more I could talk to. I want to kind of be mindful of my time. But when we think about it, you also hear this expression, smart grid. We tend to think much broader than that. We go to smart power, which says, can we innovate around traditional generation, renewables, and perhaps one day distributed generation, where I'm kind of a fan of maybe solar has a role to play there. So we need to keep thinking on that. Smart grid to us means the wires. It means transmission, distribution, smart meters. We're leading the United States in that. And then finally, the idea of what we call smart choices. This is electricity beyond your meter, how you use it in your house. And the interesting question you should ask yourselves is, how will I think differently about energy and use it differently in the future? These are all matters that are important to energy innovation. Southern Company has spent already about $1 billion on those kinds of things. On environmental innovation, we've spent over $9 billion, and we'll spend about $13 billion by the end of 2013-14, somewhere around there. We're already invested in this stuff. This is not a new concept, and it is important to America. The third item I mentioned about national energy policy really goes to this idea of restoring financial integrity of the United States. Southern Company spends $6 billion a year just on running our business. Mississippi, under the leadership of Ed Day and his team here, spend about $1 billion a year. It is absolutely imperative when you have those kinds of expenditures to be able to access the financial markets of the world in a reliable way and in a cheap way over decades. This is not a, I can take a day off kind of thing. We've got to be invested all the time. We've got to get this right. 3 issues to restoring the nation's financial integrity, easy for me to say. Number 1, I've already talked about just a bit. We have overreaching regulation in America that is equivalent, in my opinion, to the gunk in the engines of commerce. We've got to free up our economy. We've got to reduce overreaching regulation. And when I say that, please understand I am not against all regulation. I think we've had really good, effective regulation in the past. But I would say recently, and I think these people have the best of intentions, they've overreached, they've gone too far, and they're slowing down our economy and destroying jobs. Number 2 is restore the nation's balance sheet. You know that we are creating a problem for our children and their children by inflating the national deficit. We've got to deal with that. You could cut expenses, you can raise taxes, but look, we've got to find a way to grow. Failing to deal with the national debt irrefutably in the future increases interest rates and increases taxes to us all, and we know that slows down your ability to grow. We must understand we are in a globally competitive economic environment. We've got to take care of this house now. And then the third area of restoring the national financial integrity is a little wonky, but what the heck. It is the idea of tax policy. Now, our industry group's called EEI, Edison Electric Institute. I co-chair the finance group at EEI. I'm also involved at a national level with something called the Business Roundtable. Those are kind of the biggest companies, CEOs, all band together to think about issues important to business. And I'm involved in this kind of taxation issue. But it is an election year, and it's out there, and we should be kind of engaged in this issue. Here's where I stand, and I can say this as head of Southern Company, that I would be willing to trade every tax benefit we get, investment tax credit, accelerated depreciation, production tax credit, alternate fuel credit, you name it. I'll give them all away in exchange for a lower corporate income tax rate. About 25% is our math. Now, that's on a going forward basis. And what's interesting is our math is the same math for the industry, and interestingly, the same math for industrial America. But you must realize that within that math, for different companies, there are winners and losers. And because of that, we're going to have to fight through some really tough issues. But here again, comprehensive tax reform is what America needs now. Stepping down below that is just another little passion of mine, but it's two other issues. Remember I said before that because of the intensity of investment, $6 billion a year is what Southern Company spends, $1 billion a year is what Mississippi spends. We've got to raise capital all the time. Well, I mean, we're just a microcosm of industrial America. In order to run the engines of commerce, in order to induce people to commit to long-term CapEx and grow jobs and grow personal incomes, we should create tax policy that doesn't penalize capital formation. In the president's budget that was put forth, it didn't get a vote in Congress, thank goodness. There was a proposal to increase the tax rate on dividends from 15% to 45%. And within that, there was also a proposal to increase the tax rate on capital gains from 15 to about, 25%, somewhere around there. As a premise, we should not have tax policy which favors incenting investors to pick one type of investment, capital gains, over another, dividends. As a premise, create parity in the tax rate, keep them the same, between dividends and capital gains. And in order to induce people to, as companies, to commit to CapEx, and as investors, let's keep those rates as low as possible. Don't tax growth. And I am encouraged that through a lot of people's good work in Washington, and we're very involved, the Senate Democrats just came out with a proposal that does create parity and increases the rates from 15 to 20, and with Obamacare gets it up to about 23.9. I still want that rate lower. I'd like to see 15%. What if it was zero? What do you think the stock market would do? Wealth creation. What a concept. Well, anyway, let me summarize here. I talk about national energy policy, all the arrows in the quiver, the full portfolio, all the above, whatever you want to call it. This nation is blessed with plentiful, cheap, reliable resources. American families deserve better than to have no national energy policy. Clean, safe, reliable, affordable energy this country can provide. It is our job to act as leaders of the enterprise and make that happen. The second is to innovate around energy. Why should this great nation, with all the great minds and all the great academic institutions and all the power of the corporations that we have, why should we take a backseat to anybody? We're in a globally competitive environment. Getting energy right and innovating around that is important to our economy and our ability to grow and create jobs and create personal income growth and create a better future for our kids. We got to solve, third, the notion of national financial integrity. And I think you all get that in your guts. We've got to do better. You know, in closing, Southern Company, all of our companies, had this notion that, you know, you can go off and we can talk about making, moving, and selling electricity and doing all the stuff we do. But at the end of the day, the legacy that we leave behind is to be good citizens wherever we serve, to make the communities better off because we're there. When I think about reliability and I think about Katrina, and I think about, you know, it wasn't about restoring electricity, it was about restoring hope to communities and families. When I think about the obligation to get it right for the economy, how important is electricity? 60% tied to GDP? We got to get this right. It matters to people. It matters to our ability to thrive as an economy. The capitalist system depends on us being successful in this. And it matters to you as individuals. And then when I think about just how important we are to the communities, you know, I look at these folks here in the red shirts. I understand that you all are scholarship recipients. Congratulations. Associated with the Kemper County Project. We must make a positive impact everywhere we serve. It is important for us as a company to be bigger than our bottom line, to make you all better off. And I think we all share, ultimately, in having this be successful. It's been an honor and a delight to be with you this morning. Governor, thank you very much. Appreciate it.